Hi dear audience, hope you're all doing great. In this video we will study the summary of the novel A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. I hope if you listen the video complete carefully, you will not need to read the text because all things of the text have been discussed in the video. Let's start the video.
Major characters. Lieutenant Frederick Henry. Imagine this, an American, not driven by patriotic fervor, but by a restless desire for experience, joins the Italian ambulance corps during World War I. He's a man of action, a Hemingway hero, stoic, reserved, and initially, somewhat detached. But here's the twist. Henry's journey is one of profound transformation. He starts as a drinker, a womanizer, a man seeking adventure. The war, initially a distant concept, becomes a brutal reality. He witnesses horrors that shatter his illusions. His love for Catherine isn't just a romance, it's a desperate attempt to find meaning in a world gone mad. He deserts, not out of cowardice, but out of a profound realization. The war is a senseless, destructive force, and only love offers a sanctuary. His journey shows the transformation from a man that thought he understood the world, to a man that realizes he understands nothing. Catherine Barkley. Catherine is a wounded soul, haunted by the loss of her fiancé in the Battle of the Somme. She's a British nurse, a picture of grace and resilience, but beneath the surface, she's deeply vulnerable. Her relationship with Henry begins as a kind of emotional refuge, a way to escape her grief. But it evolves into something far deeper, a passionate, all-consuming love. She's a complex character, prone to moments of anxiety and insecurity, yet she displays incredible strength and stoicism, especially in the face of unimaginable pain. She is a perfect match for Henry, in that they both are very strong-willed and very resilient. They both have a very similar outlook on the world. Minor characters. Rinaldi. Rinaldi, the flamboyant surgeon, is Henry's best friend and a stark contrast to his reserved nature. He's a womanizer, a boaster, but also a skilled professional. He represents the live-for-the-moment attitude, a coping mechanism in the face of war's horrors. His banter with Henry provides much-needed comic relief, but also reveals a deep-seated fear of mortality. He is very skilled at his job and has a very strong personality. The priest. The priest is a symbol of faith and compassion in a world of violence and cynicism. He endures constant ridicule from the other officers, but he remains steadfast in his beliefs. His conversations with Henry are pivotal, exploring themes of morality, love, and the meaning of life. He represents a moral compass in a morally ambiguous world. He shows that kindness and compassion can exist even during wartime. Helen Ferguson. Helen, Catherine's friend, is a voice of reason and concern. She witnesses the intensity of Henry and Catherine's relationship and fears for Catherine's emotional well-being. She represents the anxieties and fears of those left behind, the women who watch their loved ones go to war. Her concern for Catherine is very genuine. Count Greffy. The 94-year-old Count Greffy is a wise, worldly figure who offers Henry a glimpse of perspective. He's a father figure, a confidant, and a reminder that life goes on, even amidst chaos. His philosophical conversations with Henry are very important to Henry's growth. Dr. Valentini. He represents action and competence. His quick decision to operate on Henry's leg contrasts with the other doctor's hesitation, highlighting the importance of decisiveness in a crisis. Ettore Moretti. A decorated, self-absorbed war hero, Ettore serves as a foil to Henry. He embodies the superficial glory of war, which Henry increasingly rejects. Bonello. Bonello is a chilling example of war's dehumanizing effects. His casual brutality and lack of remorse reveal the dark side of human nature. Amo. Amo's tragic death by friendly fire underscores the senselessness and indiscriminate nature of war. The Lieutenant Colonel. His execution, a stark and brutal scene, highlights the arbitrary nature of power and the fragility of life during wartime. Emilio. Emilio's willingness to help Henry and Catherine escape is a testament to the power of human kindness and solidarity. Mr. and Mrs. Göttingen. These Swiss proprietors represent kindness and a safe haven. They give Henry and Catherine a place to live during a very dangerous time. Chapter 1. The narrator, Lieutenant Frederick Henry, an American medic volunteering in the Italian army during World War I, observes conditions where stationed near the front. Soldiers often march down the road carrying heavy burdens owed the fighting, while officers speed by in motor cars. Any car going particularly fast is probably carrying the King of Italy, out to monitor the fighting. The start of winter brings steady rain, resulting in a cholera epidemic in which only 7,000 soldiers die. Chapter 2. Lieutenant Henry's unit moves to the town of Gorizia, which the Italian army has captured from the Austrians as part of a string of victories. The front line of the fighting is a mile away, in the mountains, and Gorizia is a peaceful place with cafes and whorehouses for the soldiers. One night in the mess hall, Henry sits with a group of fellow officers who are taunting the unit's priest for being celibate. Henry, meanwhile, is about to go on winter leave from the army. The officers think he should visit big cities like Rome and Naples, while the priest tells him to visit the quiet countryside of Abruzzi. Henry is silent during the conversation, which ends when the officers leave for the local whorehouse. Chapter 3. Henry returns to Gorizia in the spring, after his leave is over. He greets his friend and roommate, Lieutenant Rinaldi, who wants to know all about Henry's adventures throughout Italy, including who he slept with. Rinaldi then informs Henry that a number of beautiful English nurses have arrived in Gorizia. Henry loans him 50 lire, Italian money, so that Rinaldi can impress one of them, Catherine Barkley. At dinner, the priest is hurt that Henry did not visit the priest's family in Abruzzi. Henry, who is drunk, thinks about what it would have been like to go hunting in cold Abruzzi, and contrasts this with his memory of what it was like to go from city to city and sleep with a different woman every night. Chapter 4. Henry is awoken by the nuisance of an Austrian gun battery, firing in the distance. He goes to the garage where ambulances are being repaired and chats casually with a mechanic about the gun battery and about the day-to-day operations of fixing machines. That afternoon, Rinaldi invites Henry to accompany him to the British hospital to meet Catherine Barkley. Catherine is beautiful, with long blonde hair, and she and Henry begins flirting as soon as they're introduced. At one point, Henry comments on the riding crop Catherine carries. She tells him that it belonged to the man she was engaged to, who was killed in a battle in France. She asks Henry if he has ever loved anyone. He says no. On the walk home, Rinaldi comments that Catherine seems to like Henry more than him. Chapter 5. Henry goes to pay a visit on Catherine the next day. At the hospital, he speaks with the head nurse, who asks why he, an American, joined the Italian army. He answers that he happened to be in Italy and spoke Italian. She tells him to come back in the evening if he wants to see Catherine, who is on duty. When Henry returns that night, Catherine is in the garden with Helen Ferguson, another English nurse. After Helen departs, they talk about Catherine's nursing duties until Henry suggests they stop talking about the war. As Henry had planned, he tries to kiss her. She slaps him. He makes her laugh by saying that at least they are no longer talking about the war. Catherine eventually relents and lets Henry kiss her. Afterward, she cries on his shoulder and asks him to be good to her. He obliges by putting his arm around her, though he isn't sure what's going on. She tells him they are going to have a strange life. Henry's cocky reply about joining the army suggests that he isn't yet fully aware of what it means to take on the duties of a military officer in war. Henry and Catherine's agreement to not talk about the war is their attempt to create a world of their own, apart from the horrors of war. This is the first of many times they will try to find fulfillment in each other instead of dwelling on the war. Henry was just out to have a fling with Catherine, but her prediction of their life together indicates that, even though they just met, she wants to treat their flirting as a serious relationship. Henry goes back to his room, where Rinaldi wants to know all the details of what happened between Henry and Catherine. Henry responds only by saying that he and Catherine are friends. Chapter 6. Henry can't find time to visit Catherine for 2 days. When he does visit, Catherine tells him how much she has missed him, and asks him to say that he loves her. He does, though he knows it is a lie. He thinks that Catherine is probably somewhat crazy, but also that he prefers her to the women in the officers' brothel. Although he has no intention of loving her, he decides he will try to learn the rules of her game and play it. After they kiss for a while, Catherine surprises Henry by acknowledging that they are playing a rotten game. They continue to kiss, but she then suddenly stops, tells him he doesn't have to say he loves her, at least not for a while, and sends him home. Chapter 7. The next day, while driving his ambulance, Henry encounters an American soldier who has a hernia and can't walk. He gives the soldier a ride to the next mountain post. The soldier confesses that he had taken the truss off his hernia so he wouldn't have to go to the front lines. A truss is a device for treating a hernia, but worries that his officers will see through this ploy. Henry tells him to give himself a bump on his head so they will have to send him to the hospital. The soldier takes this advice. At dinner, Henry gets into a drinking contest with the major. Midway through a mug of wine, Henry remembers he was supposed to go see Catherine. By the time he gets there, she has gone to bed. He feels lonely and empty. Chapter 8. The next night, Henry's unit heads on its way to serve during a battle at the front. As they pass the British hospital, Henry forces the driver of his car to stop. He runs in to see Catherine and tells her that he will be in a show and that she shouldn't worry. Catherine gives him a St. Anthony Medal for luck. Chapter 9. At Pavla, the site of the battle, Henry and the drivers he commands, Gordony, Passany, Manor and Gavuzzi, wait for the battle to begin while sitting in a bunker. The men fall into a philosophical argument. While all the men hate the war, Henry argues that defeat is more terrible than war, and that if the entire Italian army just stopped fighting, everything would be worse. Passany disagrees, arguing that the war will never end until one side decides to stop. When the men get hungry, Henry and Gordon run out and grab some macaroni and cheese from another bunker. As they return, the shelling begins and they rush back to their dugout. The drivers are eating the food when suddenly a mortar shell hits their bunker, killing Passany and wounding Henry in the leg. The remaining drivers carry him out on a stretcher and a medical captain examines his leg. Henry is in terrible pain as they load him into an ambulance to leave the battle. Chapter 10. Rinaldi visits Henry, who is lying wounded in the field hospital, and brings him a bottle of cognac. He also informs Henry that he will receive a medal for heroism, even though Henry declares that he did nothing at all heroic during the battle. Rinaldi leaves, promising to send Catherine to visit Henry. Chapter 11. Later that day, the priest comes to visit Henry, bringing vermouth and English newspapers. As the two men talk, Henry admits that he hates the war. The priest responds that there are two types of men who would make war and men who would not. Henry retorts that the first men make the second men do it, and adds that, as an officer, he helps the first men. As they continue to talk, the priest expresses a wish to return home to the Abruzzi, where a man may love God. It is not a dirty joke. Henry responds that he does not love God or much of anything. The priest assures him that he has a capacity to love, and says that having sex with a woman is not the same as truly loving another person. When he loves another person, the priest tells him he will wish to sacrifice for them. Chapter 12. The doctors in Henry's hospital want to ship him to another hospital in Milan, mostly because they'll need every bed for casualties when the upcoming offensive begins. The night before Henry is to leave for Milan, news arrives that America has declared war on Germany. In celebration, Henry gets drunk with Rinaldi and another major. Henry confidently predicts that the US will soon declare war on Austria as well, while Rinaldi informs Henry that Catherine is also being sent Milan to work at the hospital there. Chapter 13. When Henry arrives in Milan, he is taken to an American hospital. The ambulance drivers who carry him inside jostle his leg, causing him pain. Once inside the hospital, the harried nurse on duty, Mrs. Walker, can't give him a room because there is no doctor present to order it and she can't read the Italian note from Henry's doctor. Henry tells the drivers to bring him into a room. He falls asleep. The next day, he meets another of the nurses, the young Miss Gage, who comes to take his temperature. He also meets the hospital superintendent, Miss Van Campen, with whom he forms an immediate and mutual dislike. When Henry requests wine with his meals, she tells him he can't have any alcohol unless the doctor, who is on his way from Lake Como, prescribes it. Henry pays a porter to secretly bring him wine and the evening papers. That night, Miss Gage brings him eggnog with sherry in it, a gift from Miss Van Campen. Chapter 14. In the morning, Miss Gage tells Henry that she discovered his secret wine. He worries that she will turn him in, but is surprised when she says that she wishes he had told her so that they could have shared a drink. Then she tells him Catherine Barkley has arrived, and that she doesn't like her. Henry promises her that she will eventually like her. At Henry's request, a barber comes to give Henry a shave. Henry tries to make conversation with the man, but the barber angrily threatens Henry with the razor. Afterward, the amused porter tells Henry that the barber thought he was an Austrian officer. A bit later, Catherine appears in Henry's room. He knows that he is in love with her the moment he sees her, and pulls her onto his hospital bed as soon as she closes the door. They make love for the first time. Afterward, Catherine warns him that they will have to be more careful in the future. She leaves, promising to return soon. Henry considers that he hadn't wanted to fall in love, but he has anyway. Chapter 15. A thin, quiet little doctor comes to inspect Henry's injury, but is exhausted by the task of pulling all the shrapnel from Henry's leg. Later, the doctor returns with two of his colleagues, who all agree that Henry will have to wait 6 months in bed and on crutches before the shrapnel can be removed. Henry asks for another opinion. A few hours later, Dr. Valentini arrives. Valentini wears the stars of a major, cheerfully shares a drink with Henry, and tells Henry he will operate on his leg in the morning. Chapter 16. Catherine spends that night in Henry's room, making love and watching searchlights roam the sky. In the morning, she prepares him for the operation and warns him that the anesthetic tends to make people chatty, so he should be careful not to brag about her. Catherine then asks Henry how many other women he has loved. He says none. Next, she asks how many he has slept with. He gives the same answer, though they both know his lying. Even so, Catherine is pleased at these responses. Chapter 17. Henry feels very sick after the operation, and Catherine doesn't visit him for a while. While he recovers, 3 new American soldiers appear in the hospital, one with malaria, one with malaria and jaundice, and a third who had tried to unscrew the fuse cap from a shrapnel shell because he wanted it for a souvenir. Henry also comes to like Catherine's friend, Helen Ferguson, who has started working at the hospital and passes his notes along to Catherine. Miss Gage, meanwhile, continues to try to flirt with Henry. One day, when Henry asks if she will come to his wedding with Catherine, she replies that she doesn't think that they will actually get married. In fact, Helen has become concerned about Catherine's health, and Henry talks with Miss Gage about getting Catherine a few days off. Catherine returns 3 days later. Their reunion is so passionate that it feels as if she has returned from a much longer journey. Chapter 18. Henry recovers enough to walk on crutches. He and Catherine share an idyllic summer together in Milan, taking romantic carriage rides and eating at fine restaurants. Henry wants to get married, but Catherine does not. She is sure that if she were married, the army would send her away from the front, and adds that it doesn't matter whether they get married because she's not religious. Her love for Henry is her only religion. She says that when she met him, she was crazy, and begs him to just be happy and love her. She admits that terrible things will probably happen to the two of them, but promises that unfaithfulness won't be one of them. Chapter 19. When apart from Catherine, Henry spends time with a number of people, including a man named Mayers and his wife. One day, when he is in a bar in Milan, Henry runs into two American opera singers, Ralph Simmons and Edgar Saunders, and an Italian-American soldier in the Italian army named Ettore Moretti. Moretti has 5 medals and 3 war wounds. He brags about the promotions he is about to receive, and advises Henry to join the American army, which is likely to pay him better. Henry describes Ettore as a legitimate hero who bored everyone he met. At the hospital that night, Catherine tells Henry that she dislikes Moretti and prefers quieter heroes. It soon begins to rain, and as they lie in bed, Catherine cries and tells Henry that she has always been afraid of the rain. When Henry asks why, she says that it is very hard on loving and that she can see herself dead in it. Henry comforts her, tells her not to be crazy, and she stops crying. Outside, the rain continues to fall. Chapter 20. A few days later, Henry goes to the horse races with Catherine, Helen Ferguson, Crowell Rogers, the boy who had been wounded by the shrapnel shell, and Mr. Mayers. Mayers is well connected in the crooked world of Italian horse racing. At the track, Catherine notices a horse that has been dyed dark purple, and insists they bet on it because she believes it is a champion horse in disguise. The horse wins, but they win much less than expected because heavy betting just before the race shifted the odds. They then bet based on a tip from Mr. Mayers and win again. But Catherine soon tires of this. Henry and Catherine leave their friends to be alone together, and Catherine bets on an unknown horse, which loses badly. Nonetheless, she is happier. And she and Henry agree that they feel best when alone together. Chapter 21. In September, the weather turns cooler and the leaves start to change. The war begins to turn against the Italian army and the Allies in general. Henry's recuperation from his injury is nearly complete, and he now has only 3 weeks left of convalescent leave before having to return to the front. Henry notices that Catherine seems upset, and after a little pressuring he gets her to tell him what's wrong. She's 3 months pregnant. Catherine asks Henry if he feels trapped. He responds that you always feel trapped biologically. This leads them close to a fight, but they both quickly back off and promise that nothing will come between them. Henry comments that Catherine is too brave for anything bad to happen to them, though Catherine counters that even brave people die. Henry then quotes the famous saying, "The coward dies 1,000 deaths, the brave but one." Catherine responds, That whoever came up with that was probably a coward, and that the person who is both intelligent and brave dies too. 1,000 deaths but doesn't mention them. Chapter 22. It rains the next morning, and Henry is diagnosed with jaundice. Miss Van Campen discovers Henry's stash of empty alcohol bottles, and accuses him of drinking in order to give himself jaundice so he won't have to return to the front. He compares jaundice to being kicked in the scrotum, and asks if she thinks anyone would inflict it on themselves. But she does not believe him, and files a report that causes Henry to lose his convalescent leave and get sent immediately to the front. Chapter 23. The night he is to leave for the front, Henry reserves a seat on the train and goes to a wine shop to meet Catherine. They stroll down the street when they pass a soldier kissing a girl against the wall of a cathedral. Henry says, "They're like us," and Catherine unhappily replies, "Nobody is like us." They go into a gun shop where Henry buys a pistol and ammunition to bring to the front. Then he suggests to Catherine that they go someplace where they can be alone. They go to a hotel across from the train station. When they get to their room, however, Catherine says that she feels like a whore. Henry wonders why she is starting an argument now, and gets upset, but then she invites him to bed and they make love. Henry still wants to believe that he and Catherine can fit normally into society, but Catherine has a different view of the world. She thinks they will always be set apart from everyone else. The pistol reminds Henry that he will soon be separated from Catherine. Catherine's comment that she feels like a whore is never entirely explained, but may imply that at this moment she feels Henry is just using her, as he has used other women, to forget about the war to which he must soon return. While they eat dinner in their room, Henry quotes a passage from a poem by Marvell, "But at my back I always hear o'er time's winged chariot hurrying near." Henry worries about Catherine being alone when she has the baby, but she tells him not to worry. Henry's recitation of the poem shows his acute awareness of the time slipping away from them. Catherine displays her typical stoicism. Chapter 24. Henry and Catherine say their goodbyes in front of the train station in the rain. The train is crowded, with every seat taken. When Henry gets on and takes the seat that he had paid someone to hold for him, an Italian army captain takes exception. After some back and forth, Henry lets the captain have the seat and goes to sleep on the floor. Chapter 25. Henry returns to Gorizia. The major fills him in on the summer full of combat, and comments that Henry was lucky to have gotten wounded just when he did. The major adds that if he had gotten an injury he probably wouldn't have returned to the front. Henry then reunites with Rinaldi. Due to all the casualties from the summer of fighting, Rinaldi has had plenty of experience operating on wounded soldiers, and now drinks and womanizes more heavily than ever. Rinaldi notes that Henry seems like a married man, then asks whether Catherine is good in bed. Henry refuses to tell him. Rinaldi notes with surprise that this seems to be a sacred topic. At dinner, the mess hall is quiet, as there are fewer men at the table. Rinaldi, getting drunk, tries to bait the priest as he used to. But his jokes fall flat, and he gets angry at the priest and the war and announces that he may have syphilis before heading off to the whorehouse. Chapter 26. After dinner, Henry and the priest talk in Henry's room. The priest thinks that now that the destruction from the war is apparent, both sides will eventually stop fighting. Henry disagrees, and argues that the winning side will never give up. Henry says that it is only in defeat that people become Christian or gentle. He adds that he no longer believes in victory or defeat. The priest asks what Henry does believe. He answers that he believes only in sleep. Chapter 27. Henry goes the next day to Bain Scissor, a mountainous region that has seen heavy fighting. There, he meets Gino, a local Italian youth. They talk military strategy and Gino then dismisses talk of defeat, saying that they cannot let the losses The Italians suffered be in vain. Henry is embarrassed by the expression in vain, as well as by other abstract words like sacred, glorious, and sacrifice. He considers these words to be meaningless and even obscene in comparison to objective details like the names of places and dates. Rain begins to fall and an enemy bombardment begins. Word races through the Italian lines that Germans are among the attacking soldiers and that the Italian lines have broken. The Italians begin a massive retreat. When they reach Gorizia, Henry sees the girls from the soldiers' brothel being loaded into a truck. Bonello, one of Henry's drivers, says that he'd like to ride in that truck and have a crack at them for nothing. Everyone has evacuated, including Rinaldi. After briefly resting and eating, Henry and the other ambulance drivers join the retreat. Chapter 28. The retreating Italian vehicles move excruciatingly slowly, and often stall. Henry checks on his drivers. Bonello has picked up 2 engineering sergeants, while Amo has picked up 2 local girls, who are frightened of the vulgar soldiers around them. Henry looks up at the rain and wishes Catherine good night, promising not to leave her, and falls asleep. He wakes to find that lines of peasants have joined the slowly retreating vehicles. He and his men decide to break off from the main road and take a smaller road through the countryside. Chapter 29. At noon, 10 kilometers from their destination, Amo's cars get stuck in the muddy road. Henry orders the 2 engineering sergeants to help free the vehicle. Fearful that they will all be overtaken by the enemy, the sergeants refuse and run. Henry pulls his pistol and shoots one of them, injuring him. The other escapes. Bonello then takes Henry's gun and finishes off the injured sergeant with a bullet to the head. Henry puts the coat and cape of the dead sergeant under the wheels of the car to help it escape from its rut, but it doesn't work. As they walk away, Bonello, who is a socialist, says that he has always wanted to kill a sergeant. Chapter 30. Henry and the drivers, now on foot, come to a railway bridge. Henry spots Germans going across the bridge and wonders why his own army did not blow the bridge up during the retreat. To avoid the Germans, the drivers sneak down the river embankment beneath bridge and are fired upon. Amo is shot through the neck and killed. Henry realizes that the frightened Italian rearguard, not the Germans, are the ones shooting at them. He and his men scramble for a place to hide. The remaining drivers find an abandoned farmhouse in which to eat a meal. As Henry sets up camp in the barn, Bonello and Piani search for food. Piani soon returns, alone, and reports that Bonello ran off, hoping to be made a prisoner of the enemy, rather than being shot at by his own army. That night, Henry and Piani rejoin the main Italian retreat, heading south. Eventually they arrive at a bridge, where Italian military police are detaining and questioning officers about their treachery, which is blamed for the Italian defeat. Henrius himself seized by 2 military policemen. He then watches as a dignified lieutenant colonel is questioned pointlessly about the retreat. The lieutenant colonel asks to be shot rather than be subjected to stupid questions. He is executed. During the commotion surrounding the execution, Henry runs for the river. He hears shots as he dives in, but the current quickly carries him away. Chapter 31. Henry is pulled down river. When he is close enough to the shore, he grabs a branch and pulls himself out. To disguise himself, he cuts the stars from his sleeve that mark him as an officer. That night, Henry sneaks onto a train. When a young soldier looks at him, her glares at the boy with contempt so that the boy looks away. Henry hides in a train car loaded with guns. Chapter 32. As he hides, Henry tries to avoid thinking about how hungry he is by thinking about Catherine, but thinking about her without being able to see her makes him feel as if he is going crazy. He decides that he has no more obligation to the Italian army, that tried to kill him, and that the war is none of his business anymore. All he wants to do is eat and drink and sleep with Catherine. Chapter 33. Henry gets off the train in Milan. He stops in a wine shop, where the proprietor gives him a glass of grappa, a type of brandy, in exchange for news of the front. Henry's vague answers, and the mark on his sleeve where the stars have been cut away, lead the proprietor to guess that he is in trouble. He offers to let Henry stay. Henry refuses the offer and assures the proprietor that he is not in trouble. Henry goes to the hospital. The porter tells him that Catherine left 2 days ago for the town of Stresa. Henry then goes to the house of the American opera singer Ralph Simmons, who gives Henry civilian clothes in which to disguise himself. Chapter 34. Henry takes the train to Stresa. As a man of military age who could be fighting in the war, he attracts scornful stares because he is dressed in civilian clothes. The stares don't bother him, because he has made a separate peace with the war. In Stresa, Henry checks into a hotel, where he knows the barman Emilio. In response to Henry's questions, Emilio directs Henry to the hotel where 2 English nurses are staying. When Henry arrives, Catherine is thrilled to see him. But Helen Ferguson angrily accuses Henry of ruining Catherine's life. Then she bursts into tears and demands that Henry marry Catherine and make a proper woman of her. Henry is now a fully formed individualist who refuses to be a part of a war he sees as corrupt. He considers his own peace with the war as valid as any official treaty. Helen recognizes that Catherine and Henry are preparing to live outside the normal boundaries of society. Though this prospect excites Catherine, it offends Helen, who blames Henry for seducing her friend. After Henry and Catherine make love in Henry's hotel room, Henry lies awake and thinks about how he never feels lonely when he is with her. And yet he also thinks about how the world breaks everyone eventually, and that those who it doesn't break, the good, the gentle, and the brave, it kills. Henry's thoughts show the novel's philosophical shift from denouncing the horrors of war to viewing the entire world as a cruel, unfair place in which even Henry and Catherine's love is just a temporary refuge. In the morning, Henry doesn't read the newspaper while they eat breakfast. He promises to tell Catherine about his experiences once he himself understands them, and she jokes that he shouldn't feel bad about deserting since it was only the Italian army that he left. Henry brings up the idea of escaping to Switzerland, and Catherine agrees. Chapter 35. While Catherine goes to visit Helen Ferguson, Henry reads the papers and learns that the Austrian advance is continuing. Henry then invites Emilio to go fishing. They have no luck and end up drinking vermouth instead. Henry asks Emilio what he will do if he is drafted, and Emilio replies that he will not go to war. He also offers to let Henry use his fishing boat anytime he wants. That night, Henry plays billiards with Count Greffy, a 94-year-old former diplomat whom Henry had befriended on an earlier trip to Stresa. Count Greffy regrets that, despite his expectations, he has not grown more devout as he has grown older. He adds that old men do not grow wise, but just careful. He asks what Henry values most. "Someone I love," Henry answers. Count Greffy tells him not to forget that love, too, is a religious feeling. Chapter 36. Emilio wakes Henry in the middle of that night and tells him that the military police have found him and plan to arrest him in the morning. He advises Henry to use his boat to escape to Switzerland. Henry wakes Catherine up. They hurry out into The rain and down to the dock. Emilio gives Henry and Catherine some sandwiches and brandy, and shows Henry how to row across the lake to the Swiss side. Henry gives him 50 lire for the food and promises to send 500 francs for the boat once he is settled in Switzerland. Chapter 37. Henry rows through the night in the choppy, storm-tossed lake. Though sore, he is desperate to get across the lake before the sun comes up so that they won't be visible to customs guards. Eventually, he gets so tired that he lets Catherine row for a brief while. He tells her to be careful not to bump her belly with the oar. She responds that things might be easier if she did bump herself. Henry and Catherine are elated when they step ashore in Switzerland. Immediately, they go to eat breakfast, leaving their bags in the boat. When they come back for the bags, they are arrested. Henry lies to the customs officer, telling him they are tourists looking for winter sports. The guards believe them because they have passports and money. Two customs officials argue over which Swiss town would be better for winter sports. The couple decides on Montrose, a skiing town in the mountains. Chapter 38. In Montrose, Henry and Catherine settle into a ski chalet, owned by a kind old couple, Mr. and Mrs. Guttingen, who live downstairs. Their life is peaceful and idyllic, full of walks through nature to neighboring villages. Henry still wants to get married. Catherine is less interested in marriage, but agrees to marry once the baby is born so that it will be legitimate. In the meantime, Catherine drinks beer because she has heard it will keep the baby small. She is worried about the baby's size because her doctor told her that her pelvis is narrow. Catherine talks often about how grand it will be to see all the sights in America after she becomes an American through marriage. As Christmas approaches, Catherine asks Henry if he is restless. He does sometimes think of Rinaldi, the priest, and the war, but assures her he is not. Nonetheless, Catherine suggests Henry change something in his life to reinvigorate it. Henry agrees to grow a beard. For her part, Catherine wants to get her hair cut short to become even more like Henry, but Henry objects. Catherine then proposes that they go to sleep at the same time, but she falls asleep first and Henry stays awake, watching her. Chapter 39. In January, the weather turns sharp and cold. Henry's beard has grown in. One day, as they rest at an inn during a walk, they agree that they don't miss seeing other people. They worry that the baby, that little brat, might interfere with their isolation and come between them. Chapter 40. March and spring arrive, and Henry and Catherine move to the town of Lausanne to get closer to the hospital. Henry reads in the paper that the German offensive against France has begun. He drinks a lot and, in deference to Catherine's wishes, continues to grow his beard. He begins to box at a local gym, and she buys baby clothes, but they both have the feeling that, with the baby coming so soon, they cannot waste any time together. Chapter 41. One night, at 3 a.m, Catherine goes into labor. Henry takes her to the hospital, as she talks in a jovial way about the pain of her contractions. Once they reach the hospital and she is given a room, she tells Henry to go out to get breakfast. The nurses tell Henry everything is going fine. He goes to get breakfast. When Henry returns from breakfast, Catherine has been brought to the delivery room and is strapped to an operating table and inhaling gas to help the pain. She has been in labor for 9 hours. Henry goes to have lunch. When he comes back, she is drunk on the gas and her labor has not progressed. The doctors decide that a cesarean section is the best option. To save both Catherine and the baby, they wheel Catherine away. Soon, the doctor emerges with a baby boy. Henry feels nothing for the baby. He tells the nurse that he hadn't wanted a boy and rushes inside to see Catherine. She asks about the baby. He tells her it is fine. The nurse looks at him strangely, and takes him out of the room to inform him that the baby was stillborn. Henry goes to dinner and reads in the paper about some success on the British front. When he returns, he learns that Catherine has had a hemorrhage. Henry begs God not to let her die, but when he gets to see Catherine, she stoically tells him she's dying and asks him never to say the things he said to her to anyone else. The doctors ask him to leave, assuring him that Catherine will be fine. She dies while Henry is in the hall. The doctor wants to take Henry back to his hotel, but he refuses. Instead, he goes in to say goodbye to Catherine's lifeless body. But it was like saying goodbye to a statue. He leaves the hospital and walks back to his hotel in the rain.
Thank you, respected audience, for listening to the summary. Hope you have enjoyed it.